September 4th, 1999. A man is arrested in a hotel room in Hamburg, Germany. In his luggage, 547 diamonds sewn into his clothes. The FBI had been hunting him for 4 months, across 3 continents. His name was Martin Frankel, and what he pulled off is the most audacious financial fraud in American history. He stole over $200 million from 11 insurance companies in 6 states. He convinced the Vatican to protect him. He used a Ouija board to make financial decisions, and he ran his entire criminal empire from his bedroom. Martin Frankel was banned from Wall Street. He couldn't execute a single trade, and somehow he fooled everyone. Toledo, Ohio, 1954. A quiet Jewish family, a nervous, anxious kid. Martin Frankel attended the University of Toledo. He never graduated, but he was obsessed with one thing: money, markets, numbers. In 1986, he finally got his chance. He landed a job at a small brokerage firm owned by a man named John Schulte. There was just one problem. Martin Frankel couldn't actually make trades, not because he lacked knowledge, but because something in his brain froze every single time. He would sit at his desk for hours, staring at the screen, unable to press the button. He was fired. But John Schulte's wife, Sonia, didn't leave with her husband. She left with Frankel, and that decision would cost 11 insurance companies $200 million. Because Martin Frankel had a new plan. If he couldn't make money the legitimate way, he would simply steal it, slowly, quietly, for an entire decade. By 1992, the SEC had caught up with him, fined him $1 million, banned him from trading securities forever. Most people would stop there. Martin Frankel was not most people. He created new identities: James Spencer, David Ross, Mike King, and he found a loophole: insurance companies. Here's why insurance companies were perfect. Small funeral insurance firms in the American South, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, lightly regulated, cash-rich, nobody watching. The business model was simple. People paid monthly premiums. The company held that money in reserve to pay out when someone died. Frankel's plan? Buy the company, steal the reserves, use that money to buy another company, repeat. Through a trust called Thuner Trust, with $71 million, he acquired controlling stakes in company after company, 11 companies in total, 6 states. The money was supposed to be invested in government bonds, safe, stable, boring. Instead, it went directly into Frankel's own shell companies and then straight into Swiss bank accounts. The victims, ordinary people who paid for funeral insurance, who thought they were protected, who had no idea their premiums were funding a man's bedroom empire in Greenwich, Connecticut. That bedroom, by the way, had 80 computer screens, all showing CNBC around the clock. And at the center of it all, a man who still couldn't bring himself to make a single trade, but had no problem stealing from the dead. By 1998, Frankel had a problem. The money was enormous, but the regulators were starting to ask questions. Where exactly were these insurance reserves being invested? Who was managing them? Frankel needed cover. Not just any cover, the most credible cover in human history: the Vatican. He created a fake charity, the St. Francis of Assisi Foundation, to serve and help the poor and alleviate suffering, based in the British Virgin Islands. With a noble mission: invest in insurance companies to fund hospitals. He needed one thing to make it real: a Vatican signature. He found Monsignor Emilio Colagiovanni, 82 years old, personal legal advisor to the Pope, one of the most respected men in the Catholic Church. Frankel's offer? $5 million for Catholic charities. In exchange, the Monsignor would sign a letter stating that the Vatican had transferred $1.2 billion to the foundation. The letter was a complete lie. The money never existed. The Monsignor signed it. Insurance company executives flew to Rome. They got personal tours of Vatican City. They shook hands with church officials. They went home and approved the deals. Frankel also needed a famous American name on his board of directors. He chose Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in American television. Cronkite refused. Frankel used his name anyway. By the end of 1998, Frankel was funneling $434 million in fake insurance policies through his Vatican-linked charity. The scheme was the most sophisticated fraud the American insurance industry had ever seen, and it was about to collapse. April 1999. George Dale, insurance commissioner of Mississippi, started asking questions. Why was $600 million being transferred from a Vatican-linked foundation in Italy to a charity in the British Virgin Islands to a trust controlling Mississippi insurance companies? He sent a formal demand. Frankel was summoned to Jackson, Mississippi, to explain everything. Frankel didn't show up. Back in his Greenwich mansion, Martin Frankel sat at his desk, 80 computer screens flickering, Sonia beside him, and on the desk, a Ouija board. The question written in the FBI evidence files, dated April 4th, 1999, read simply, "Will I go to prison?" Also found in the mansion, a handwritten list titled Things to Do. Number 1 on the list, launder more money now. Frankel had spent a decade building his empire, and in 1 month, it was over. Mississippi regulators put his insurance companies into receivership. The companies collapsed. Hundreds of thousands of policyholders were left with nothing. Frankel had one move left. May 1999. Martin Frankel set fire to his $3 million Greenwich mansion. Not the entire building, just the files, the evidence, the paper trail. When firefighters arrived, they found the charred remains of the documents, and beside them pornographic videos, jewel-encrusted mobile phones, a Ouija board, and the handwritten list. Launder more money now. Frankel was already gone. Private plane, Rome, then Hamburg. The FBI tracked him across 3 continents. Agents Joseph Dooley and Aaron McNamara followed every lead across Europe. September 4th, 1999, Hotel Prem, Hamburg, Germany. When German police entered the room, they found Martin Frankel, and sewn into his luggage, his clothes, his bags, 547 diamonds, valued at millions of dollars. The most elaborate financial fraud in American insurance history ended in a Hamburg hotel room with a man surrounded by diamonds he couldn't actually spend. In 2001, he was extradited to the United States. In May 2002, he pleaded guilty to 24 federal counts: securities fraud, wire fraud, racketeering. 16 of his associates were convicted. Sonia Schulte, 4 years in prison. Monsignor Colagiovanni, fined $15,000. No jail time. He was 84. December 2004, Martin Frankel stood before the judge. He had one explanation for everything, he said, and these are his exact words, that he stole $209 million to take care of Sonia and her children. The judge looked at him and asked, "So, you stole $209 million in order to take care of the children?" Frankel then explained that he couldn't stop the scheme, because stopping it would have exposed everything. He also asked the judge not to consider deterrence in sentencing, because, again, his exact words, "If somebody is mentally ill, you shouldn't punish them because it won't stop other mentally ill people from doing it." The judge sentenced him to 200 months in prison, 16 years and 8 months. The insurance companies he destroyed left hundreds of thousands of ordinary Americans without the funeral insurance they had paid for. George Dale, the Mississippi commissioner who brought him down, later said, 2 federal agencies fumbled the ball with Frankel. The IRS approved his taxes. The FBI had suspicions but made no moves. In the end, insurance commissioners brought this guy down. The Vatican denied any knowledge of wrongdoing. The lawsuit against the Holy See was eventually dismissed. Martin Frankel, the man who couldn't press a trading button, had fooled the American financial system, 6 state governments, and the most powerful religious institution on earth for 10 years, with nothing but fake names, a Ouija board, and an old priest who needed $5 million.